between Delhi and Ottawa likely to get a whole lot worse. That's my top focus on the news track.
India puts Trudeau on notice. Trudeau isolated and ignored. Visas blocked, properties seized. Supari posters removed in Surrey. Trudeau forced to tone down. Will this escalate or cool down? Big focus on Newstrack.
What's also clear now is the role being played behind the scenes by the United States in giving evidence, in quotation marks, to Canada, which enabled Trudeau to go out and make these allegations in public. India isn't backing down. A massive crackdown launched on Khalistani elements and their assets in Punjab and elsewhere. I'll track all of that for you. Let's get started. Here are the headlines today. Prime Minister Modi's all-out attack on the Congress says the party has handed over reins to urban Naxals. PM declares he's the only one who can fulfill guarantees. AIADMK exits the NDA ahead of the 2024 elections, blames Tamil Nadu BJP Chief Annamalai for the breakup. India today accesses Khalistani terrorist Gurpatwant Pannu's dossier. Documents reveal Pannu was engineering a plot to radicalize Kashmiris. All his Chandigarh properties have been seized by the NIA. Big boost to the Indian Air Force. C-295 transport aircraft inducted by the Defence Minister will be used to paradrop troops and cargo. India begins its goal hunt at the Asian Games. Women's cricket team and the 10-meter air rifle trio of Rudraksh Patil, Aishwari Thomar and Devansh Pawar win the gold medal. As the diplomatic standoff between India and Canada gets worse, India has started cracking down on Khalistani elements back home. Properties of designated terrorist and Hardeep Nijjar's lawyer, Gurpatwant Pannu, have been seized. The NIA has also named more Khalistani supporters who are active overseas. That's not all. Overseas citizenship cards of Khalistanis are also likely to be cancelled.
A bogus, non-binding exercise aimed at diasporic seats. A so-called Punjab referendum asking participants whether they want the Sikh majority Punjab in India to become a separate Khalistan. The man behind the sham project, Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, a lawyer of joint US and Canadian citizenship who seeks for justice communities proscribed by India. The 56-year-old supporter of Khalistan, born in village Khankot of Amritsar and now based in the United States. He was declared a terrorist by India in 2020. Pannu named in more than a dozen criminal cases, some of them linked to terror and other violent activities. The NIA has intensified its crackdown on Pannu. Over the weekend, 2 of his properties were confiscated in Amritsar and Chandigarh, and so was his agricultural land in his ancestral village of Khankot in Amritsar district. Slain Khalistani supporter and designated terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar was one of advocates of Pannu's sham Khalistan referendum in Canada. As per sources, overseas citizenship cards and passports of Khalistani supporters involved in vandalizing Indian consulates abroad will now be cancelled by India. Indian agencies sharing their details with airports to keep a tab on their movements. The NIA has authorities also finalized a list of 19 Khalistani fugitives who are part of anti-India plots. Most of them living in the US, the UK, Canada, Dubai and Pakistan. The action comes amidst diplomatic escalation between India and Canada over Nijjar's murder. With Shreya Chatterjee, Bureau Report, India Today.
I want to go across live at this moment to the Toronto Indian Consulate. Joining me from there is my colleague Anisha Mathur, as India Today is the only Indian news channel to have a reporter on the ground in Canada. And Anisha has been reporting live throughout the weekend since this story broke. Anisha, give our viewers at the outset a net sense of what you've picked up. You've been there now for 48 hours plus. You've had an opportunity to feel the pulse of how this story is being decoded, deconstructed in Canada. Give our viewers a sense of what you've picked up so far.
Well, Rahul, I'm right now outside the consulate in Toronto where the police has put out barricades, and I'm just showing you there's some bit of police presence. Protesters from Sikhs for Justice are expected here today. But what is interesting is this sense that we are getting in Canada is that a large number of people in Brampton, in the suburbs of Toronto, which have a large Indian population, the Khalistan issue has been something that has been simmering for a while. We've been seeing this increase in amount of anti-India, anti-Hindu sentiment in Brampton, as well as other areas. There were, in the last year, we've seen at least 4 instances where vandalization was done at temples, and this has created a sense of unease and discontent among the Indian citizens, even as all of them continue to say that, well, for the last several years we've all been living in harmony, there has never been a problem, but in the last year or so there seems to have been a larger number of incidents and a larger presence of aggressive young men who are raising these issues. We've seen, of course, in Surrey, which is on the other side of the country, in Vancouver, the situation is much more. Here, at least on the East Coast, in Toronto, in Ottawa, people continue to say that, well, you know, this is about 5% of the Sikh population which is actually supporting the Khalistani movement, but they are a very aggressive, very, very loud minority, which is sort of also worrying the people who are living here. And it is also being seen as a reflection of the real politic of Canada itself, the economic situation, the power that the vote banks hold here, especially with the Trudeau government being a minority government, the fact that the Liberal Party has supported the Khalistan movement so far, the fact that the NDP has a sizable Sikh voter base, and the fact that now with the Conservative Liberals and the NDP trying to fight it out to see what happens to the future of politics in Canada.
Mathur, thanks for joining us. We'll come back to you for more later. Anisha will be in Toronto. She'll go to Ottawa, then to Vancouver, and track this story from Canada for us. Meanwhile, the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau hasn't been having a good week since the time he alleged that Nijjar was assassinated by Indian agents. He's been ridiculed at home. His popularity ratings seem to have been on a downward spiral, and he finds himself now in the midst of a row over applauding a Nazi World War II veteran.
It hasn't been a good week for the Canadian Prime Minister. It's been 6 days since he dropped the diplomatic equivalent of a nuclear bomb on India-Canada relations with this.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Since then, it's been an uninterrupted downslide for Justin Trudeau. Politically ridiculed, diplomatically criticized and isolated even by his closest friends. As we mark a week since Trudeau's quest to paint India the assassin of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Nijjar, let's see how it's going for the Canadian Prime Minister. For starters, India hit back instantly with a visa blockade, stunning Team Trudeau. Canada's conspicuous lack of reciprocal action not only showing weakness, but the country's helpless dependence on Indian labour and workers in Canadian industry. Second, Trudeau's attempts to rally the Five Eyes intelligence alliance, the world's so-called Anglosphere. But each of those major powers, the US, UK and Australia, provided only token words of support, nothing near the kind of backing Trudeau was hoping for. In this game of optics, it was clear Prime Minister Trudeau was all alone in his mission against India. The third big embarrassment for Trudeau, the claim from one of his own allies that his allegations against India are based on open source information available on the internet.
The only briefings that I've been able to receive from CSIS are what are called open information briefings or open source briefings, which is information that's available to the public doing an internet search, which I find frustrating.
The fourth big blow to Trudeau were his plummeting popularity ratings, with his political opposition using the moment to mount a ferocious attack on him.
I think we need to see more facts. The Prime Minister hasn't provided any facts. He provided a statement, and I will just emphasize that he didn't tell me any more in private than he told Canadians in public, so we want to see more information.
Fifth, and probably most embarrassingly, Trudeau's closest government ally, the Khalistan sympathetic Jagmeet Singh, virtually threw the Canadian Prime Minister under the bus, putting out this tweet, where he cunningly fitted in a criticism of his close friend Trudeau in an unrelated issue, hoping to offset the heat on himself. Sixth, with the global glare now fixed on his accommodation of terrorists on his soil, a shamefaced Trudeau had to order the offensive posters to be pulled down from the Surrey Gurudwara. Posters honouring terrorist Nijjar and calling for the killing of Indian diplomats. Seventh, with India stepping up the pressure and seizing Indian properties of 19 Khalistani terrorists, including several based in Canada, Trudeau will likely begin to face unbearable heat from the very section he's been trying to milk for politics. And finally, with a list of Canadian Khalistanis whose PIO and OCI green cards are all set to be cancelled, ending their chances of easy travel to India, Trudeau will face the music from extremists who took their India linkages for granted thus far. As you can see, it hasn't been Trudeau's week. Bureau Report, India Today.
So will Justin Trudeau and Canada see the light of reason? Will they do more than just pull down hoardings and posters of Khalistani terrorists? And if not, where do India-Canada ties go from here? Will there be further escalation? It's also very clear that America playing a role in supplying some form of intelligence to Canada, which enabled Justin Trudeau to make the statements last week. To talk about this and more, I'm joined on this broadcast by Terry Milevsky. Those who have been watching India Today over the last several months will know that Terry has been reporting, researching and writing a lot about the menace of Khalistani terrorism inside Canada. With us is Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies. Brahma Chalani is joining us from advisor to India's National Security Council. Everything he's saying and writing about Canada and India seems to be viraling at this moment. Vivek Kharju joins us, former secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. And I have just Sardar Jotjeet Sabharwal, spokesperson of the BJP. I want to go across first to Terry Milevsky. We've seen over the weekend in some of the gurdwaras where hoardings and posters had been put up asking for Indian diplomats to be attacked, assaulted, killed. You know, someone's taken them down. This could be the Canadian government, these could be people at the Gurdwara, we don't know, but in Canada those hoardings seem to have come down. Do you see Justin Trudeau and the Canadian government try and de-escalate tensions, or are they looking to up the ante even further? Where do you see this go from here? Terry Milevsky.
It's possible that there was a small-scale tactical move to maybe we shouldn't. This isn't the right time to have these posters in people's faces, as it were. Right now, it's kind of embarrassing, isn't it? And that reflects an important development in this affair, I think, namely that at the beginning of this affair, the Khalistanis in Canada were jumping for joy. You see, the Prime Minister himself has now endorsed our point of view that the Indians are out there killing Khalistanis, and this is a triumph for us. Well, of course, the problem was that the spotlight of publicity, when trained upon the Khalistanis, to which most Canadians rarely pay any attention at all, was an embarrassing spotlight, because people started to realize, oh, you mean these are the people, they're putting up what posters? They're putting up posters of the worst mass murderer in Canadian history, the Kanishka bomber, Talvinder Parmar. He's got a life-size martyr poster glorified on the side of a major Gurdwara. Then they started to notice, who is this character Panoon? They don't know who this Panoon character is from so-called Sikhs for Justice, the guys who are running the referendum campaign. Well, what's wrong with the referendum? Now they're looking more closely and they're seeing, oh, Panoon is putting out these videos. He's the one that named the referendum campaign after Talvinder Parmar. Panoon is the one who was, oh, we saw that video of him burning the Indian flag. And what about the video which he calls I Am Dilawar, in which he steps into the shoes of famous assassins like the suicide bomber who killed Chief Minister Bayant Singh of Punjab in 1995, and more. What about Panoon's signs and posters calling upon Sikh soldiers fighting in the north to desert the Indian army and go fight for the Chinese? And more and more and more, including, of course, more recently, the killer posters naming and shaming Indian diplomats, painting targets on their backs and calling them killers. So people are now learning what they have been ignoring for many years. This has been going on for 40 years. The Canadians have been looking the other way, not taking much interest, and taking the view that it doesn't concern them what the Khalistanis are doing in Canada. It's an Indian problem. It's not our problem. Well, now they're being reminded, are they not, that most of the passengers who died in the Kanishka bombing were Canadian citizens. So I think they're not jumping for joy anymore.
Abhijit Iyer Mitra, we're being told that the Americans provided some of the signal, human, technical intelligence, which forms part of the basis why Justin Trudeau spoke the way that he did. You know, and it's a bit rich coming from the United States, which very actively and openly goes out and takes down terrorists who have been hurting American interests. But yet, in this case, seems to be wanting to preach morality in the complete absence of putting forth even a shred of evidence. Even the Canadian opposition leader we saw in that report was asking for proof.
Absolutely, Rahul. Before I start, Rahul, do you know who François Mario Bachand was?
Okay, go on. Tell us.
He was actually a chap associated with the Front de Libération de Québec. And Justin Trudeau's father, Pierre Trudeau, ordered his assassination. So the predecessor of the CSIS, the current Canadian Intelligence Service, carried out his assassination in Paris in 1971. 1971, incidentally, was the same year that Canada was pretty much supporting Pakistan, carrying out a genocide in Bangladesh next to us. Right. Now, what do you call a country? And Canada has a long history of providing refuge to genocidaires, to mass murderers, to criminals. The latest example you saw was a Ukrainian Nazi being feted on the floor of Canadian Parliament. But let's not forget the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, Chrystia Freeland, whose grandfather, Mr. Cholmiak, was a known Nazi who used to put out lists of Jews for the German army to go kill. And Miss Freeland herself worked for a Ukrainian-Canadian newspaper that used to run advertisements and stories glorifying Nazis and the Ukrainian participation in Nazi war crimes. Canada has also supported a lot of, Canada was one of the prime areas for LTT funding, Rahul. A lot of LTT funding used to get raised in Canada, and, that resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, the rape, killing, maiming, God knows what not of hundreds of thousands of people. Now, what do you call a country like that? Is that country your friend or your partner? But more importantly, addressing your question, what do you call a country that spies on you and serves up intelligence to a country that is a home for genocidaires, terrorists, and specifically terrorism aimed at you? Does such a country get a label of being a strategic partner? How? I don't know. We also need to be very, very clear, Rahul, that what we call Khalistan, there is no such thing as Khalistan. Khalistan is a joke. All right. I can today, sitting in my house in Safdarjung Enclave, declare it to be the Republic of Abijitistan. And given the number of followers, I think I have more followers on Twitter than the Khalistan referendum has voters. So, I think my claim of being an independent nation is more legit. But we need to understand what this Khalistan is. It is an organized network of crime which does gun peddling and drug dealing across Punjab, whose back office operations. Now, Canadian firms, Canadian banks have their BPOs in Delhi, across India. Crime operations in Punjab have their BPOs in Canada. And what they do is basically this entire Khalistan sham is when you get accused of crimes to cite political repression. You can't be arrested for political dissidents. Of course, Justin Trudeau arrests you for political dissidents as well. Remember, they labeled this Ukrainian Nazi yesterday a freedom fighter, whereas he was calling his own truckers, protests, terrorists, and far-right Nazis. He actually called them Nazis. But what happens here is they're using this loophole to claim that their drug running and gun dealing is basically a front for freedom, and there being any action against them is a repression for freedom. I think you know a very famous Indian journalist who does tax evasion but claims she's being oppressed for, her views. Pretty much the same game out here.
Okay. Brahma Chelani, what do you see happen next? We're seeing some forms, some suggestions of Trudeau wanting to calm things down just a bit, but he's done all the damage by exploding this diplomatic nuclear tactical weapon. Do you think things will get worse, or is Trudeau likely to see some form of reason, or is that too much to expect?
I think it's in the interest of both Canada and India to arrest the downward spiral in relations. Unfortunately, there have been no new moves by either side to trigger countermeasures by the other side since at least Friday. So there might be some cooling of tensions, but the problem is that Trudeau has painted himself in a corner. He has presented no evidence to back his allegations against India. Instead, one of the unintended consequences of his action in leveling allegations against India is that it has helped to shine a spotlight on Canada's sordid record of harboring extremists, war criminals, and terrorists, not just from India, from multiple countries. So now the spotlight is on Canada. It's partly because of the India allegations that Trudeau has made, and also now because of Friday developments when the Canadian Parliament gave a standing ovation to a Nazi who now lives in Canada. So people are waking up to the reality that Canada has become a safe haven for all kinds of extremists, terrorists, and war criminals. And I think that in a situation like this, in which Trudeau finds himself cornered, unable to convince his own people at home, people within Canada are demanding that he present some evidence against India. In this situation, what New Delhi can do is to just watch developments quietly, and this is what New Delhi is doing.
Terry Milevsky, how do you explain this Nazi Ukrainian getting a standing ovation? It's almost as if the Trudeau government doesn't do any basic background checks. It's embarrassing at another point. I mean, it's the height of wokeness or the height of pointlessness.
It is embarrassing, and it's not the first time this has happened. You may recall Trudeau's first visit to India in 2018, when he had a terrorist invited to dinner. A convicted Khalistani terrorist was invited to dinner with the Prime Minister at the Canadian High Commissioner's residence in New Delhi on an official visit. And nobody realized this wouldn't look very good. And of course, it was a fiasco. So there have been examples previously of bad judgment by the Prime Minister's entourage. This was a screw up. There's no way around it. But simply because his staff screwed up, the vetting wasn't done properly, nobody realized that this veteran was fighting on the other side, that doesn't change the facts of the matter with respect to the killing of Mr. Nijjar. That's still the main issue, and the rest of it is kind of off the point to me. That point remains that right now, the onus is definitely on Trudeau to produce evidence, and he has failed to do so beyond this sort of daily drip of small leaks. The latest one suggesting that the Canadians did give at the official level to the Indians at the official level before Modi weeks ago. Some details, for example, that they had the signals intelligence, they had additional intelligence from the United States, and that they had phone numbers, wiretaps, which indicated a connection. Now, they haven't proved a word of this. They need to do that. And there's no excuse for Trudeau not presenting his evidence. He says he doesn't want to interfere with the investigation. He's already done that. He's announced its conclusion, for heaven's sake, by kicking out an Indian diplomat. But on the other side of the ledger, remember, Mr. Modi knows what Trudeau told him. Mr. Modi didn't sit there like a potted plant when he met with Trudeau in New Delhi at the end of the G20. Mr. Modi would not have rejected the Canadian allegations if he didn't even know what they were. I mean, that's inconceivable. So he knows what they were, and I don't know what prevents him stepping up and saying, look, Trudeau doesn't want to produce his evidence because it's so weak. It's rubbish. And I can prove it because I know what he's saying, and here's why it's rubbish. Now, that would be game over. That would be a big victory for Mr. Modi. But he doesn't seem willing to do that, does he? Not yet. I find that interesting. Let's put it no more strongly than that.
Vivek Kaju, now in the way that things are unfolding, 2 or 3 things are clear. One, the Americans, our strategic allies and friends, seem to be snooping on our diplomats. God alone knows where, but most certainly in Canada. Secondly, that they seem to have some signal intelligence to suggest that some Indian diplomats are involved. You've served in so many embassies, high commissions, you've served India internationally. Do you find that plausible, an Indian raw operative? I mean, first, we don't know if we did it. Even if we did it, the most natural way to do it would be through an Indian deep state asset, engaging some criminal gang in Canada, getting a hit organized. Doing it through a diplomat sitting in Canada, that just seems like the most amateur way of doing this.
Rahul, permit me to make a few points. The first is that I think Mr. Trudeau went overboard in using the kind of language that he did in leveling charges against India in his parliament. That is point one. Point two, you've asked me about the intelligence game. In my career as a diplomat, I always presumed that people were snooping, and you took basic precautions to prevent people from snooping. This is a game that is played internationally, and I would not go further than that. Third, and I think this is the relevant point, and this is the point that Terry should appreciate. At least in India, prime ministers and political leaders do not speak in matters relating to police investigations. These are matters, a murder investigation is for the police, and it is the police that has to take charge of it and proceed with it. The next point. Even if the Americans, and please note, I'm stressing the point, even if the Americans have given intelligence, right? We do not know what is the nature of that intelligence. But the question is whether such intelligence would be admissible in a court of law. My own understanding is, at least under the Indian legal system, there is a difference between information, intelligence, and evidence that is admissible under the Criminal Procedure Code and under the Penal Code. I would imagine that in Commonwealth, in Canada, it's much the same. So, per se, if you have procured intelligence through means that are not sanctioned, say, by the Vienna Convention, you can do nothing about it.
No, but Abhijit, do you buy this argument that there is signal?
One last sentence.
Okay, very quickly. Wait, yes, Mr. Kajal.
Just one sentence. It is a strange situation that Canada is asking India to convert this intelligence or whatever they have into evidence to self-incriminate itself. Where in the world do you expect anyone to do that? Terry should understand that.
Abhijit, do you buy the argument that there could be some signal technical intelligence which has Indian diplomats on the call where they are ordering some kind of a hit or part of this operation? Isn't that just the most amateur way of going about this operation, even if Ajit Doval and the Indian government are somehow involved?
So, Rahul, see, this is a three-part answer. The first part is, signals intelligence is never what you see in movies. It's not like, Canadian intelligence picked up me calling Rahul Kanwal saying, oh, Rahul, we're going to kill Terry Milevsky tonight. Let's take that book behind him and bash him over the head with that. And, boom, smoking gun. That happens in movies. It does not happen in real life. In real life, signals intelligence is extremely hard to interpret, extremely hard to crack. Number one. Number two, when you reveal signals intelligence to the person that you intend to investigate, that is India, you blow your sources of signal intelligence. You give away where it was collected from. If you remember, Narasimha Rao was planning a nuclear test. The US ambassador showed him all the satellite imagery and the signals intelligence. And then when Vajpayee decided to do the nuclear test, the Americans were caught completely off guard because we knew what time their satellites were passing over. We knew the frequency of their intercepts, etc., etc., etc. So you blow that. The third part, to add on to what Ambassador Karchu said, is, the problem here is what has been shared, and segueing on to what Terry also said, all my government sources are telling me that what was given to the government was credible allegations. No credible intelligence. It's just that, we've got you, you better cooperate. No specifics, no dates, no times, nothing about the nature of the intelligence. What you have seen in public, essentially what the Premier of British Columbia, I think it was, or Mr. Eby, whatever he's the Premier of, what he got was what was given to India, and it was, you better investigate. Note, there has been another murder since then. A day before yesterday, a gentleman called Sukhdev Singh was killed in the ongoing gang warfare, which we call the Khalistan movement in Canada. Notice nobody wants to talk about it. This should have technically, Justin Trudeau, knowing him, he should have sold this up as, oh my God, India is so brazen, after I've accused them, they've come and killed another guy on our soil. Because they know that we didn't do it. They have no evidence. It's always credible allegations. Note, he has said credible allegations from day one, never credible intelligence.
I want to go across to Sardar Jyotjit Sabharwal of the BJP, because in all the voices we are hearing from Punjab, they're saying, okay, this is a battle between two governments, but in your action of putting Canadian visas on hold for those who don't have Canadian visas, those Canadians who don't have Indian visas, you are hurting people-to-people ties, you're impacting those who have family and friends in Canada. How does the BJP respond to this, Mr. Sabharwal?
People do not learn and create towards culture
I don't hear him well. Just give me a moment to fix that connection. In the meanwhile, I just want to tell our viewers that amongst the Khalistanis being sheltered in Canada is Hardeep Singh Nijjar. India today has accessed the Delhi police charge sheet against this Khalistani gangster, which reveals a stunning link to Pakistan's ISI and the Lashkar-e-Taiba.
The series of killings of Khalistani terrorists in Canada have put the spotlight on Hardeep Singh, also known as Harsh Dala, a terrorist wanted in India. India today has accessed the Delhi police charge sheet against Harsh Dala. The charge sheet sheds light on Harsh Dala's and Hardeep Singh Nijjar's connections to the ISI and Lashkar-e-Taiba. RSS leaders, Hindu seers and Punjab Shiv Sena leaders were on the Khalistani hit list. The terrorists allegedly conducted recce while plotting an attack on the Shiv Sena leader. The revelations don't just end here. Harsh Dala and Lashkar were allegedly behind a murder in Delhi this year. The prime suspects, Jagjit and Naushad, allegedly killed a man by slitting his throat as part of a trial. The two suspects were allegedly paid money by Harsh Dala.
Harsh Dala, the man that we are talking about, was the man that agencies are after, has worked along with Nijjar, Khalistani terrorist who is in fact in Canada. This is the man in fact on your screens, Harsh Dala, a Khalistani terrorist who works and functions, lives in Canada. He is connected to two other terrorists, Naushad and Jagjit, who are the Khalistani terrorists in Delhi. Rajkumar was the victim in this case, where his throat was slit. This video was first then made and then sent to Harsh Dala. This is the victim. In fact, this particular video that was sent by Naushad and Jagjit to Harsh Dala.
The question is whether the ISI is trying to revive the Khalistani movement with the help of terror organizations based in Pakistan. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, the prospects of America supplying intelligence to Canada in this entire matter, how seriously do you take that, Vivek Kharju? Do you think that America behind the scenes is using this as leverage to put pressure on India? Should this make New Delhi more wary about how we look at America, because India has been tilting more westwards, embracing the United States as a counterbalance to China as part of America's Indo-Pacific strategy, whereas actually in India's interest it is to be as close to being friendly with China as is possible?
Look, I'll say something which I hope won't be misunderstood, but I'll say it bluntly. We should never overlook the solidarity that the Anglo-Saxon world has for themselves. And as a pointer to this, let me point to AUKUS, the Australian, UK and US nuclear submarine project, where the Australians are going to build nuclear submarines on the technology supplied by the Americans, in which the French too have been excluded. We talk of code. So therefore, this Five Eyes, what is this intelligence cooperation? It is the cooperation of the Anglo-Saxon world. They think the Anglo-Saxon world has this feeling of solidarity, which is almost, how should I say, atavistic. It's primeval. And we should never overlook that. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't look at their greater interests. But when it comes to closing ranks, they have always done so. Let us not forget that. I'm sorry I'm putting it straightforward.
You must, absolutely.
But I think we should understand this.
Abhijit, do you think this should make India more wary about embracing the United States to the extent that it could potentially create problems for us going forward?
Absolutely, Rahul, because look, we have signed SISMOA, or at least our variant of SISMOA, I think it's called something else, which is the interoperability agreement with the United States. Now, if the US is spying on us to this degree already, imagine what interoperability will allow them to do. That is spying literally on every single one of your units, where they are, what their ammunition levels are, where they're deploying to, etc., etc. I think this raises a very, very big question on the India-US relationship, especially more so because the way the Five Eyes agreement is structured isn't that it requires Antony Blinken or the president to say, yeah, sure, share this intelligence with them. It's that countries that have huge hostile constituencies to India, like the Pakistani-run BBC and the Pakistani-infiltrated police services in Britain, or the Khalistani-infiltrated establishment in Canada, can just go into American intelligence and pick and choose what they want. Do not forget, Khalistanis in Canada cooperate very, very closely with Pakistan and the ISI. One of the reasons the Kartarpur corridor has been opened up is precisely because of this kind of collaboration that has been going on. There are too many second and third order consequences now of having any kind of intelligence sharing or interoperability with America after this episode.
Jyotjit Sabharwal, how are you looking at the pressure from Punjab, the pushback from the Canadian diaspora, from the Punjabi Canadian diaspora, saying that your action has gone overboard, this should have been dealt with at a government, political, diplomatic level. Now too many family, friends are involved, it's unfair to them.
I must make it very clear that we as South Indian Sikhs, we have had enough now. I mean, it took 3
months for Justin Trudeau to come into the parliament and speak on murder of Hardeep Nijjar based on Google information. That's very unfortunate. And, there have been movements in Canada. There have been movements led by separatists in Canada. You talk about Quebec, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Labrador. India has never interfered. But Khalistanis have been openly, organizing demonstrations, referendums, putting hoardings, calling for assassination of Indian officials. And Hardeep Nijjar's son, he just gave a statement that his father was in touch with the CSIS, the Canadian intelligence, and the Canadian intelligence advised him to stay at home. That means somehow, it would not be wrong to argue that the Canadian intelligence was protecting Mr. Nijjar. So there is nothing as such. We are late, but it's never too late. And whatever restrictions are being put in place for the Khalistanis, it is a very good step. And it is very pertinent here to mention that there is no harm in putting such restrictions. And in the coming days, we will see more such restrictions.
Okay, we're already seeing an NIA clamp down on Khalistani terrorists and their Indian assets. And when people look at it, many would wonder, including those who are watching at this time, why wasn't this done earlier? Why did somebody like Gurpatwant Pannu have so much land, property in Chandigarh, Amritsar, etc.? Why wasn't this seized earlier? Like it has been for leaders of the Hurriyat Conference, like it has been for Kashmiri separatist leaders. Yes, Mr. Sarwal, please.
See, this is a whole conspiracy run by the Khalistani elements, and I would sum up in 30 seconds. Khalistanis, just like Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. Now he said he's been asking Hindus to leave Canada and go to India. The basic motive behind this is they want to incite Hindus, they want to incite the Indian agencies, they want Hindus to retaliate and say that Sikhs should leave Bharat. They want to create a narrative that Sikhs are unsafe in Bharat, whereas we are proud Indians and we are safe in Bharat. The only thing is they want to defame India and they want to amplify their radicalization process, because the more unsatisfied and the more unsafe Sikhs will feel in India, they are more prone to join their movement Khalistan.
No, but also it's a bit rich. It's a bit rich in conclusion, Abhijit, for all these Khalistani terrorists sitting in Canada to talk about an independent Punjab when most of them have absolutely no intention of coming back anywhere close to Punjab. They're living on their farms in Canada very happily, so fomenting trouble but not wanting to come back.
Absolutely, Rahul. And you do need to remember this is an organized crime network. The biggest victims of these Khalistanis are in fact Canadian Sikhs. Do you know the kind of terror Canadian Sikhs live under? Imagine a poor boy from, say, rural Bathinda or rural Ludhiana landing up in Canada. Socially awkward. He has to depend on on his uncles or aunties or whatever to get a job, to get accommodation, to get whatever. And that is entirely run as an extortion network. I myself remember lived in Australia. I faced this as a Tamil, where I had to suppress my Tamil identity because in Melbourne, the LTT used to run extortion networks. It is in fact the future citizens of the so-called Khalistan who are the biggest victims of these so-called Khalistani leaders. I think everybody sees them for what they are, except apparently the Canadian government.
Well, they can have a little republic in Brampton, do their own thing over there, create as much trouble as they want for Justin Trudeau, because there's very little support for the Khalistani movement in India. There hasn't been since early 90s. Even at that time, it was only the fringe, not the mainstream. I'm out of time. We will look at this story very carefully. We've got reporters on the ground tracking this from Canada. You saw Anisha in Toronto. We've got others in Vancouver and Ottawa. So we'll have their reportage out for you. Slipping into a break. When we come back, Prime Minister Modi's all-out attack on the Congress says the party has been handed over to a group of urban Naxals. Details coming up on the other side. Stay with us.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNB Group Company.
India Today Conclave 2023, October 4th and 5th, Mumbai. Listen to Sharad Pawar, Devendra Fadnavis, Sushil Kumar Modi, Supriya Sule, Swapan Das Gupta, Aditya Thackeray, Uday Kotak, Arvind Vijay Mohan, Ashish Chauhan, Pradip Gupta, Vijay Verma, Ali Fazal, Bhumi Pednekar, Kusha Kapila, Shehnaz Gill, Urfi Javed. Book your seats now. Visit indiatodayconclave.com. Conclave 2023.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
Prime Minister Modi was in Madhya Pradesh today, where he launched a big attack on the Congress. Addressing a rally in Bhopal, the Prime Minister said the Congress had outsourced its policy to urban Naxals. He also accused the India alliance of betraying women of the country over the quota bill.
Narendra Modi! Dhanyavad! Dhanyavad! Prime Minister Narendra Modi sounds the poll bugle in Madhya Pradesh.
Bharat Mata Ki!
Modi started with a roadshow in Bhopal on Monday before addressing the Karyakarta Mahakumbh to mark the culmination of BJP's Yatra in the state. He was given a rousing reception by women workers of the BJP for getting the bill on women's reservation passed by Parliament. The Prime Minister accused the opposition of trying to divide Nari Shakti.
माँ का प्यार उन्होंने दिया मातृ शक्ति को अधिकार.
ये नारी शक्ति को बांटने की पूरी कोशिश करेंगे. नारी शक्ति एक न हो, इसलिए भांति भांति की अफवाहें फैलाएंगे. इसलिए देश की हर माता, बहन, बेटी को सावधान रहना होगा, सतर्क रहना होगा और एकजुट रहना ही होगा.
Prime Minister Modi launched a frontal attack on the Congress, comparing it to a company being run by what he called urban Naxals.
कांग्रेस का ठेका अब कुछ अर्बन नक्सलियों के पास है. कांग्रेस में अब अर्बन नक्सलियों की ही चल रही है. इसलिए कांग्रेस जमीन पर भी लगातार खोखली हो रही है.
Alleging years of misrule and corruption in the state under the Congress, Modi warned first-time voters against reposing their faith in the Congress.
एमपी में कांग्रेस के शासन की पहचान थी कुनीति, कुशासन और करोड़ों का करप्शन. कांग्रेस ने साधन संपन्न मध्य प्रदेश को, समर्थ युवाओं वाले मध्य प्रदेश को बीमारू बना दिया. दोस्तों, बीमारू बना दिया.
Madhya Pradesh Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan is battling anti-incumbency after years in power. The party is banking on Modi's popularity to turn the tide. Bureau Report, India Today.
This is where we wrap up the news track tonight. For your time and your trust, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you 8 p.m. tomorrow evening. Till then, from all of us here, goodbye, good night.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNB Group Company.
पहले बर्बाद हुई, अब बैंकरप्ट हुई और अब कांग्रेस ने अपना ठेका दूसरों को दे दिया है. कांग्रेस को अब कांग्रेस के नेता नहीं चला रहे. अब कांग्रेस एक ऐसी कंपनी बन गई है, नारों से लेकर नीतियों तक हर चीज आउटसोर्स कर रही है. और ये ठेका किसके पास है जानते हैं? कांग्रेस का ठेका अब कुछ अर्बन नक्सलियों के पास है. कांग्रेस में अब अर्बन नक्सलियों की ही चल रही है. ये ग्राउंड पर कांग्रेस का हर कार्यकर्ता महसूस कर रहा है. इसलिए कांग्रेस जमीन पर भी लगातार खोखली हो रही है. मैं मध्य प्रदेश की बहनों को याद दिलाने आया हूं कि मोदी ने आपको जो गारंटी दी थी वो भी पूरी हो गई है. कुछ दिन पहले ही लोकसभा और राज्यसभा में माताओं, बहनों, बेटियों के लिए 33% सीटें आरक्षित करने का कानून पारित हुआ. नारी शक्ति वंदन अधिनियम देश ने नया इतिहास रच दिया है.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest Be Sustainable Change, a BNB Group Company.
While the Hollywood loves some of the ice clinical medical grade skincare, it is a luxury buy for your skin due to the high price points. Fire and Ice Facial is trending too. Follow this process. Always cleanse, treat, heal and protect. That's so 2023. Speaking of protect, sunscreen is super important. The ones with silicone with the PA+++++, that is 4 pluses, are key.
A more powerful PA means your sunscreen is also equally powerful. So if you are buying a PA triple plus or PA 4 times plus, it means your sunscreen is giving you optimal safety against UV rays.
But hang on, a sunscreen is not just enough. What about the blue lights? These cause severe damage and age the skin. Hence, you can add a blue light protector just before your sunblock, like a Caro oil. That is Skincare 2023 for you.
The carrot oil or the Caro also has antioxidant properties for anti-aging, for smoothing the skin, for improving the quality, the texture, the shine in the skin. And it beautifully blends with this, is absorbed by the skin and cuts the blue light.
Net, some of the best brands for skincare are the ones that are medical grade, gentle yet effective. Always speak to your doctor and get prescriptions. Our picks for the most effective skincare for Indian skin in the luxury range include Ice Clinical, FCL, Sesderma and Bioderma. In the affordable range, Cetaphil and Sebamed. In New Delhi, Chethi Narula for Lifestyle Bureau India Today.
Weather forecast now. Delhi, maximum 37 and minimum 25 degrees. Mumbai, maximum 29 and minimum 25 degrees. Kolkata, maximum 32 and minimum 25 degrees. Bangalore, maximum 27 and minimum 20 degrees. Chennai, maximum 33 and minimum 24 degrees. Hyderabad, maximum 29 and minimum 23 degrees.
So sorry.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNB Group Company.
Co-presented by Star Health Insurance, the health insurance specialist.
Co-presented by JK Tyre Ranger Series, stay wild at heart.
Co-presented by
हर घर का हीरो ग्रीन प्लाई का E0. Co-powered by PolicyBazaar.com, हर family होगी insured. Co-powered by the bold look of Kohler.
Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, Monday night. Your destination for news, newsmakers, talking points. The big talking point, Canada's Khalistan connection. The most prominent Indo-Canadian will be speaking to us. I'll be joined from Vancouver by Ujjal Dosan. She'll tell me more on that. Also, the AIDMK has walked out of the NDA. What does that mean for Tamil Nadu? Is that state still a bridge too far for the BJP? All that and more coming up, but first, as always, it's time for the 9 headlines at 9. Amidst the escalating India-Canada diplomatic war, security at the Indian High Commission in Canada and across its various consulates in the country beefed up after Khalistani extremists plan a massive demonstration against the killing of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. India, meanwhile, tightens the noose around Khalistani terrorists and their supporters in India. The properties of designated terrorist Hardeep Nijjar's lawyer Gurpatwan Pannoon seized by the NIA. Narendra Modi hits the campaign trail. The Prime Minister's all-out attack on the Congress says the party has been handed over to urban Naxals. Rahul Gandhi in Chhattisgarh hits back, says the BJP had remote controls. One operated by billionaires, another for the privatization of public sector units. AIDMK exits the NDA ahead of the 2024 general elections, blames Tamil Nadu BJP chief Annamalai for the breakup. BJP insists the breakup will have no impact on the poll results. Kaveri water war intensifies in Karnataka. Farmers and pro-Kannada organizations declare a strike across Bengaluru tomorrow. Protesters disagree with water management's order asking Karnataka to release water to Tamil Nadu for 15 days. A Dalit woman is assaulted, stripped and urinated upon in Patna for refusing to pay additional interest on a family loan. Cops swing into action, complaint registered, search operation to arrest the absconding accused. A massive boost to the Indian Air Force C-295 air transport aircraft inducted by the Defence Minister. It will be used to paradrop troops and cargo. Despite repeated attempts, Indian Space Research Organisation receives no signals from the lunar explorers Vikram lander and Pragyan rover since their landing on the lunar surface. And India strikes gold at the Asian Games. The women's cricket team and 10 meters air rifle trio of Rudraksh Patil, Aishwarya Tomar and Divyansh Panwar win the gold medal. But the story that's breaking right at the top of news amidst India-Canada's diplomatic war, now Khalistani groups today are protesting outside the Indian High Commission, and an alert has been sounded in Canada across all Indian security establishments or Indian government establishments. Security tightened at the Indian High Commission in Ottawa as well as embassies across that country. So the Indian taking no chances as Khalistani extremists are hitting the street. Anisha Mathur, our correspondent, joins me live from Toronto at the moment. Anisha, these protests presumably being called by Khalistani extremist groups, how seriously are the Canadian authorities taking it, given the fact that they are accused in the past of being extremely lenient with these Khalistani groups? Is there a large presence on the ground?
Well, Rajdeep, the Canadian police has tightened security outside the consulate here in Toronto. I can show you right here the barricading that has been put up. There are police officials around this entire street right now. Not just the Toronto Metropolitan Police, but also, if you can see behind me, these large SUVs. This is the presence of the Federal Royal Canadian Police. The Federal RCP is also here. Barricading, of course, police presence. They are scattered across the street right now. But what we are seeing really is that arrangements like this, ensuring police presence, is something that reporters here are telling me that the Canadian government always does. Whether whichever protest it may be, they will allow the protesters to protest as long as nothing goes wrong, that there is no violence, there is no call for violence. And that is why I'm just going to turn around and show you around here the police presence that is here. In the area. There are officials, media persons of course also have started to gather, but mostly what we are seeing is that the protesters are expected to reach here in another half an hour to 1 hour. This of course being the building where the consulate office is. Both entrances have been have police presence here. People's IDs are being checked here very regularly. But Canada seems to be taking the issue quite seriously, but whether or not they will take action against the Khalistani extremists is something that India has been constantly asking. Rajdeep.
Okay, Anisha Mathur joining us there at the high security now, which is slowly being put outside the embassy and consulates across Canada. Now, all of this, of course, happening at a time when that escalating diplomatic war is taking place, a war of words after the killing of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. These separatists are threatening the Indian diplomatic missions, but amidst the growing tensions, the fact is that Canada finds itself in a prickly spot. How are relations between the two countries playing out on the ground in Canada? Anisha Mathur reports from Ottawa, the Canadian capital.
India-Canada showdown escalates. Khalistani extremists have planned demonstrations against the killing of one of India's most wanted fugitives, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. They have threatened to shut down New Delhi's diplomatic mission in Ottawa. The aggression comes after Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, chief of the banned Khalistani outfit, Seeks for Justice, issued a video threatening Hindus living in Canada to leave the country. The frequent threats by Khalistani extremists have made the Hindu community wary. In Toronto, India Today found that Hindu shrines are taking many precautionary measures in view of the warnings.
जो आप बोल रहे हैं कि हम लोग डर रहे हैं, डेफिनेटली डरना पड़ेगा क्योंकि सब घर में ये बातें चर्चा हो रही है. सरदार जी हमारे फ्रेंड्स जो है वो भी बोल रहे हैं कोई बाहर मत जाना अकेले, ये लोग की भरोसा नहीं है इनका.
Meanwhile, the Canadian government is caught in a diplomatic quagmire after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused India of a role in the killing of Khalistani terrorist Nijjar on Canadian soil. Canadian Defence Minister Bill Blair has affirmed Canada's commitment to pursue partnership while investigation into the killing continues.
There is a very significant concern that Canada will have with respect to the violation of our sovereignty and the murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. And at the same time, I also want to acknowledge the importance of the Indo-Pacific strategy. We've been working very hard over the past several years, and most recently in building trade agreements in the region, and through the Canadian Armed Forces, we have been increasing our presence and patrols in the region. And so the Indo-Pacific region, including our relationship with India, is important to us.
The Canadian government is under pressure both at home and abroad to produce evidence to back Trudeau's charges against India. Trudeau's comments have put not just Canadian ties with India in jeopardy but have landed his Western allies also in a soup. With Anisha Mathur in Toronto, Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me now is a very special guest from Vancouver, Canada, joined by Ujjwal Dosanjh. He is a former minister in the Liberal Party government, has been Premier of British Columbia, and is someone who knows Justin Trudeau rather well. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Dosanjh. given all that has happened in the last week with India-Canada relations, it started with Justin Trudeau claiming there was a potential link of the Indian government to the killing of Mr. Nijjar there in Canada. What's your sense? Is Justin Trudeau doing this, as many believe, for his domestic constituency, or is he convinced about this Indian government link? Where is he coming from?
Well, there may be an element of domestic politics in how he's handled this. But it's quite well known that Globe and Mail, the major newspaper in Canada, was about to reveal it on the front pages of its newspaper. And they approached the government and told the government. And I think Mr. Trudeau then scrambled and made the remarks in the House that he did. I think there's a widely held perception in Canada, which takes into account both issues. It's believed that he needed something for domestic consumption because his polling numbers are low, but it's also believed that he needed to get ahead of the story because the newspapers were going to make it public. So
just a minute, you're telling us something big. You're saying that you believe the story was about to be broken in Canadian newspapers. This reached Trudeau, and that's what prompted him to go public with it. Am I correct?
Oh, that's part of the story here, part of the facts here on the ground in Canada. Yes.
There is also the belief, though, that he is supported by the likes of Jagmeet Singh Dhaliwal, the MP from Burnaby South, who belongs to the New Democratic Party of Canada. They support his Liberal government. Were there coalition pressures that have led Trudeau to be seen as soft on those who openly advocate a separate nation of Khalistan?
Mr. Trudeau, even before Mr. Jagmeet Singh came on the scene, Mr. Trudeau was surrounded right from his leadership days by Khalistani sympathizers and supporters. And that's a widely held perception that he has a soft corner for them. And now, in fact, it's not coalition, but there is what's called a demand and confidence and supply agreement. And that is that, that given a vote in the House, the NDP would, led by Jagmeet Dhaliwal, would support the government unless they pull out of that agreement. And that, in fact, raises the other issue. If you are officially dependent on the likes of Jagmeet Singh and his party's support, and Jagmeet Singh himself, it's quite a well-known impression right across the country that he himself, I have seen his videos on the net in the past where he spoke on 6 sovereignty conferences. And he's spoken at other events. And it took him a long time to condemn Talvinder Parmar, the Air India bomber. So I think, and he has never he's never declared his commitment as a national leader of Canada to the unity and integrity of India, a friendly country. And the other problem I think we have in this country is that, it's appropriate for people to say, yeah, everybody has the right to free expression. We draw a line on violence. But nobody in Canadian politics of any stature has ever publicly said, yes, well and good, you have the right to speak your mind, you Khalistanis, but we don't support the idea of dismembering a friendly democracy, no matter how faulty it might be, faultier than ours perhaps, but still a friendly democracy. And that is where I fault the Canadian politicians.
Is that just Mr. Trudeau or across the board? Are Canadian politicians across the board not doing enough to take on those who advocate violence and separatism?
Oh, I think conservative politicians are slightly better on that score than the other politicians. But Liberal and NDP politicians, by and large, have never cautioned the Khalistanis. Look, control your activities. We don't believe in dismembering a friendly country. If they said that, if they had said that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would believe that Canada would not be home to a burgeoning Khalistani movement where none exists in Punjab, where I was in May of this year. There wasn't a saffron turban to be found in my big village.
So, in a way, you seem to be suggesting to me that there's been a high degree of tolerance, even co-option of these elements. Have they now begun to dictate the agenda to Trudeau, or do you believe that Trudeau comes from a point where he actually may have received, as some suggest, intelligence inputs from the Americans and others, suggesting a role in Nijjar's killing?
Well, I think that on this issue, I have to believe him. He's the prime minister of the country. I am a citizen. I'll have to believe my prime minister. If he says
what?
he has
With due regard, sir, believe what? Believe a potential link? I mean, what does a potential link mean? Without hard evidence?
I must believe that he is telling the truth to the people when he speaks in the House. I don't know what a potential link means. They've talked about signals intelligence and communications intelligence. If they know who pulled the trigger, why is the RCMP still running around trying to identify the so-called assailants and the driver of the getaway car? And I understand that the getaway car was some 2008 Toyota or something. If the government of India was going to kill somebody, couldn't they afford something better? I don't know.
But how are the likes of Nijjar seen, though, in Canada among the Canadian Sikh community? I had a guest the other day who said 80 to 90% of Canadian Sikhs also have no time for any kind of violence linked to the Khalistani movement. Do you go along with that, or do you believe these groups have substantial support?
Oh, absolutely. I go along with, I in fact said 95% of Canadian Sikhs don't want to have anything to do with it. But, the problem is that everybody's busy making a living, raising their children and grandchildren. People like me, I've been doing this since the 80s. You get tired, you move on. But these guys, because the Khalistan lives in their heads, and they're isolated perhaps from the larger society here, and it gives them a cause, something larger than themselves, something outside of themselves to latch onto. It gives perhaps a meaning to their lives, but they carry on, and guys like us, people like us, don't have the time to fight them. And it's not my obligation, it is the obligation of the government of this country to send a message to the extremist elements in Canada who are trying to dismember a friendly country. Hey guys, that's not acceptable. Nobody's done that.
I want to ask you this, and I want to tell our audiences this first, that you were assaulted by Khalistanis outside a parking lot in February 1985 because you were publicly condemning the extremist elements. The assault resulted in a broken hand and 80 stitches on your head. Have people like you been targeted as well, even today?
I haven't. The last public threat I got was back in 2010, 2011. There hasn't been the opportunity to speak about this issue in the sense that it hasn't been in the public domain in the larger society. I only address sort of the mainstream issues. It's become a mainstream issue because of Mr. Trudeau's a reference to it in the House. And now, I have a choice to either keep quiet or say my piece, and I'm happy to say my piece.
Are you saying, therefore, that a majority of mainstream Canadians simply have no clue of what Khalistan is about, and even within the Canadian Sikh community, it is a small but vocal minority that is pushing the issue? Am I correct?
You are absolutely correct. The vast majority of Canadians don't even know what Khalistan is. Many of them might not even know where Punjab is. But the Indians in Canada, the Canadian Sikhs in particular, they are as proud Indians as the Punjabis and Sikhs in Punjab are. And, we are civilizationally Indians, and to deny that fact is crazy. And to keep wanting to divide Hindus and Sikhs, who have, I see not much difference in terms of the communities. One of the problems is that in places like Canada, there is no healing process for the grievances or the hurt that you might carry in your head about 84, what happened in 84 in Amritsar or in Delhi. Whereas in India, you live together, you intermarry, you're seeing each other every day, you have friends and family, and there's a healing process. So Indian Sikhs have moved on. They know that Hindus in India don't hate Sikhs. Here, the narratives Khalistanis are trying to propagate is that Sikhs are persecuted in India. That's the basis of the continuing demand for separation.
How does Trudeau benefit from all of this? Surely his global image, if he's seen to be patronizing those accused of violence and separatism, doesn't get lifted. Do you believe that he's gambled big, therefore, by doing what he has, gone public in the manner that he has?
Well, I think he's damaged himself, as I said before. He's damaged himself as the most important diplomat for our country. So therefore, he's taken himself out of the equation for being the interlocutor on behalf of Canada. If he has to speak to India, he needs someone else from his government or from this country. And there are lots of people who can do that. These kinds of issues, they have to be resolved at the table, not shouting across international borders. And there's no question there's a bit of if India did what it's alleged to have done, it would give India a black eye in the international arena. But, India wouldn't be the first to have done that. That's not to say I'm taking it lightly, but, US and Russia and others have been known to do that with the Iranian general or with Osama bin Laden. And so let's not be holier than thou. That's not to suggest that I accept what India has done as the appropriate thing, if India has done it.
But if India has done it, will Nijjar be seen as some kind of a martyr, and will Canadians respond very differently? Or will they say, look, as you said, other countries in defense of their national interests may well take to extraterritorial killings?
Oh, well, I mean, look, I don't think that anyone in Canadian politics is going to take it lightly. I don't think they should, but that's a different matter. Real politics tells you that countries do this. That doesn't mean it's acceptable. I think that Mr. Trudeau's image has taken a big hit in terms of international situation. The allies, the Five Eyes allies have been a bit mute on the issue. I mean, they've expressed, they've urged India to cooperate, and they said, look, we shared intelligence. But they've been somewhat mute because they know that this kind of situation shouldn't be allowed to damage the relationships between them and India, which are important to them. And I suggest that to Canada, India is very important as a democratic country, as an ally. I hope that this issue is resolved, both as an Indian by heritage and as a Canadian by citizenship. I hope it's resolved soon.
The fact is the Indian government has strongly denied the allegations that have been made by Prime Minister Trudeau. I just want to understand, though, from you, Mr. Dosanjh, is there a new sort of perception of India now in Canadian eyes, given the fact that you've got so many young Indians now coming to Canada to study? We have more than 3 lakh Indians as we speak with student visas in Canada. Is India seen by the Canadians as an important country that you need to work with, and that soft power of India, whether it's cinema or cricket, is now becoming more and more important in Canada?
Well, it is. I mean, it is becoming more important. It's been important for some time. As I said, India has arrived internationally. And therefore, I think Canadians are aware that India is an important country. It can be an important ally. And there's no question that's the case. But that's why I actually say to India, if India has done it, India would get a black eye, at least amongst those who think countries shouldn't be going across borders and killing people.
I want to ask you, though, in conclusion, there are lots of Indians, though, who still are angered by the fact that the Air India Kanishka bombing of 1985, those involved were not prosecuted. The Canadians botched up the investigation and people got away, and that gave many Khalistanis of today's generation possibly the impunity to believe they could get away with what they do in terms of publicly stating their stand on Canada's streets and advocating separatism and violence. Do you believe that is something, since you were there around at the time, that will continue to, will you appreciate India's concerns that Canada has not done enough either to prosecute or extradite or deport those allegedly involved?
I think Canada, bungled the Air India issue. It came late to the table on that issue. The inquiry was held like, 20 years later, judicial inquiry, and only one person has gone to jail with respect to that. And that's not good enough. Canadians believe it's not good enough. And that, as you argue, that may have given some sense of impunity to those who continue to work for the dismemberment of India sitting here on Canadian land.
Because India has given lists in the past of alleged Khalistani terrorists residing on Canadian soil, and the Indian argument is not enough has been done by the government in Ottawa to actually address India's concerns, be it on Kanishka or be it on other events.
Well, in terms of the list you talk about, look, India and Canada have an extradition treaty, and my view is, if you have the evidence, formally request the extradition. It was done in the case of a young woman who was murdered at her mother and uncle's behest. The mother and uncle are now sitting in India. They've been taken from here. They're facing trial in Punjab for that murder. So, I think, there are other channels to deal with it. Simply handing a list of terrorists or alleged terrorists doesn't make for an extradition. And that is my concern. I think India should be active on the extradition front.
But you see, the perception that Canada has become a haven for terrorists, these are words being used by Indian government officials. Does that trouble you as someone who's been part of Canadian politics and India-Canada relations for years, that now today Indian officials are openly saying that Canada has become a haven for terrorists?
Well, it does trouble me because I'm both an Indian by heritage and Canadian by citizenship, and I go to India fairly regularly, and I love the idea of India that I grew up in. My grandfather spent 8 years in British jails fighting for the independence of the country. So I'm quite attached to the idea of India, and I want Canada and India to have good relations. But both governments need to work on it, and I think Canadian government has been remiss. Canadian politicians have been missing in action on this issue. They have not tried to dissuade Khalistanis from trying to dismember a friendly country. That is the bottom line, I think. If Canadian politicians actively took the position and said, hey guys, nothing doing. You cannot continue to argue for dismemberment of India. It's a friendly country. I believe that that Canada wouldn't be a place with a burgeoning movement for Khalistan where none exists in Punjab.
Ujjwal Dosanjh, for speaking so freely and candidly and giving us a sense of a proud Canadian-Indian perspective. I appreciate your joining us here on the news today. Thank you so much.
Good to be with you.
Okay, to election news now. The story that's breaking: the Bharatiya Janata Party has released its second list of candidates for the crucial Madhya Pradesh Assembly elections that take place later this year. Union Minister Narendra Tomar will fight the Madhya Pradesh Assembly polls. Also, Union Minister Prahlad Patel, Fagan Singh Kulaste are in the fray. Kailash Vijayvargiya, the BJP's senior leader, also in the BJP list to contest from Indore. He hadn't contested in the last election. So clearly the BJP has decided to put up all its heavyweights in what promises to be perhaps the biggest battle of this winter election, the closest fight expected by many there in Madhya Pradesh. So you've got a situation where all the BJP's senior ministers at the center are now being told to contest the state elections to try and, in a way, build up momentum for the party. Remember, opinion polls have suggested a very tough fight there between the BJP and the Congress. Kamal Nath versus Shivraj Singh Chauhan. But now Mr. Chauhan will have to look over his shoulder and perhaps see other potential Chief Minister candidates if the BJP wins. The likes of Narendra Tomar and Kailash Vijayvargiya have never hidden their ambition to become Chief Minister of the state one day. Joining me now, Hemendra Sharma joins me from Bhopal. Hemendra, what explains this decision? Narendra Tomar, Kailash Vijayvargiya, Prahlad Patel, all of them will be seen as potential challengers if the BJP wins to Shivraj Singh Chauhan. Is the BJP sending out the message that we are not just about Shivraj Singh Chauhan, we have many other leaders also?
Well, it appears so, because Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Bhopal today. He was addressing the Karyakarta Mahakumbh. The BJP claimed that 10 lakh workers from across the state had come to participate in that Kumbh, but not even once did Prime Minister Modi refer the name of Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan. Narendra Singh Tomar was the only leader who was available on the stage, on the dais, who gave a bouquet to Prime Minister Modi. Other than that, there were women from Panchayat leaders to Member of Parliament who welcomed the Prime Minister and thanked him for the Women Reservation Bill. But other than that, he never took the name of the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh. And now it appears that the BJP has put its best foot forward. They have fielded 7 members of Parliament, 3 union ministers and stalwarts like Kailash Vijayvargiya, and they'll be contesting elections. So it has become a very interesting contest in the days ahead.
Hemendra Sharma joining us there. Very interesting, the BJP deciding to put all its leaders from Delhi also in the battle in Madhya Pradesh. Amit Shah, remember, has been put in charge of the BJP's Madhya Pradesh campaign. Now, already the sounds of the elections are being heard. Prime Minister Modi was in a rally in poll-bound Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan today against the backdrop of the Women's Reservation Bill being passed. He launched a scathing attack against the Congress, comparing the party to a company run by urban Naxals, he said. Meanwhile, Congress MP Rahul Gandhi was also in election-bound Chhattisgarh, hitting back at the BJP, calling it a party that works for billionaire corporates. Listen in to what was happening.
पहले बर्बाद हुई, अब बैंकरप्ट हुई, और अब कांग्रेस ने अपना ठेका दूसरों को दे दिया है। कांग्रेस को अब कांग्रेस के नेता नहीं चला रहे, अब कांग्रेस एक ऐसी कंपनी बन गई है, नारों से लेकर नीतियों तक हर चीज आउटसोर्स कर रही है। और ये ठेका किसके पास है जानते हैं? कांग्रेस का ठेका अब कुछ अर्बन नक्सलियों के पास है। कांग्रेस में अब अर्बन नक्सलियों की ही चल रही है। ये ग्राउंड पर कांग्रेस का हर कार्यकर्ता महसूस कर रहा है। इसलिए कांग्रेस जमीन पर भी लगातार खोखली हो रही है।
जैसे ही रिमोट कंट्रोल दबता है, एक तरफ अदानी जी को बंबई का एयरपोर्ट मिल जाता है, फिर से दबाते हैं, अदानी जी को रेलवेज का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मिल जाता है, फिर दबाते हैं, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर मिल जाता है। तो 2 रिमोट कंट्रोल चल रहे हैं। ये हमारा वाला सबके सामने चलता है। बीजेपी दबाती है, पब्लिक सेक्टर प्राइवेटाइज हो जाता है। आपने 5 किसानों के कानून, काले कानून बनाए, उसमें उनको फायदा देने की कोशिश की। तो मैंने उनसे पूछा, नरेंद्र मोदी जी, आपका रिश्ता क्या है? उनके हवाई जहाज में आप जाते हो, रिश्ता क्या है? जवाब मिला, मेरी लोकसभा की सदस्यता रद्द कर दी।
Interesting on the election trail, Rahul Gandhi versus Modi yet again. Now, in a setback to the ruling NDA ahead of the 2024 Lok Sabha polls, the AIADMK has ended its alliance with the BJP in Tamil Nadu. The party leadership unanimously passed a resolution on Monday after what it called repeated attacks by state BJP chief Annamalai. What does all this mean? Take a look.
The BJP's southern mission has suffered a big jolt. The AIADMK has walked out of the National Democratic Alliance. The decision to part ways with the BJP was taken at a meeting chaired by former CM E. Palanisamy. The announcement was greeted with fireworks by the party cadre.
வருகின்ற 2024 நடைபெற இருக்கின்ற நாடாளுமன்ற தேர்தலில் அனைத்திந்திய அண்ணா திராவிட முன்னேற்ற கழகத்தின் தலைமையில் போற்றுதலுக்குரிய எங்களுடைய கழகத்தின் பொதுச் செயலாளருடைய தலைமையில் மற்ற கூட்டணியோடு இணைந்து தேர்தலை சந்திக்கும் என்பதை நாங்கள் தெரிவித்துள்ளோம்.
The AIADMK has been at loggerheads with the state BJP chief Annamalai, who had made comments against former CM J. Jayalalitha in the past. The latest flashpoint was his comment critical of Dravidian icon CN Annadurai. The AIADMK is incidentally named after Annadurai.
முத்துராமலிங்க தேவரையா சனாதன தர்மத்திற்காக என்ன பேசுறாருன்னு சொல்றது என்னுடைய கடமை. அத மதுரை மீனாட்சி அம்மன் கோயில்ல மறைச்சு பேச முடியாது, திருச்சி பேச முடியாது. அண்ணாதுரை அவர்களை எங்கேயும் நான் தவறா சொல்லல, எங்க தவறா சொன்னேன்? சரித்திரத்தில் இந்த சம்பவத்தை நான் எடுத்து காட்டியிருக்கிறேன். அதே போல யாரும் எங்களுடைய அடிமையும் கிடையாது. நான் சொல்லுகின்ற கருத்தை யாரும் ஏற்றுக்கொள்ள வேண்டிய அவசியம் இல்லை. தனி கட்சி, தனி கொள்கை.
If the AIADMK sticks to its decision, the BJP will have to form an alliance of its own in Tamil Nadu, a state where the party doesn't have much of a presence. Bureau Report, India Today.
So what does all this mean for Tamil Nadu politics? Remember, it's a state with 39 Lok Sabha seats. Joining me now, Kovai Satyan, AIADMK spokesperson, Sumant Raman, political analyst. The BJP doesn't at this stage want to officially respond to all that's been happening on the ground. But let me come to you, Mr. Satyan, at the very outset. What does this really all mean? At the end of the day, you won just one seat last time in Lok Sabha 2019. Will this alliance, breaking up of this alliance, make any difference? What is the main reason why you've chosen to do it 6 months before the general elections?
Yeah, good evening, Rajiv. Good to be in your show after a long time. But you know it pretty well. Tamil Nadu is a swing vote policy state. 2014, we swept the entire MP seats. Then 2019, it is our rival DMK. And AIADMK is all set to rewrite history under our leader, EPS, 2024. So the stage is set. But however, being in an ally, there is something called a sanctity, alliance dharma. And there is a Lakshman Rekha. And our ally can't take us for granted on multiple occasions and try to test us.
No. So what happened? So what suddenly happened for you to wake up one day? Only a month ago, I saw Mr. Palanisamy here in Delhi with Prime Minister Modi at the NDA ally meeting. Suddenly, what has changed?
It is not sudden, Rajiv. It is simmering for a quite long period of time. Calling out our founders, calling out our leaders, and passing remarks which are not palatable to the party headquarters as well as to the cadres. We indeed passed a resolution against the state leader, Mr. Annamalai, 2 months ago and sent it to the High Command of BJP. So it is not a knee-jerk reaction or a one-day affair. This has been simmering for a quite long period of time, and finally the D-Day has come.
Okay.
BJP needs AIADMK in Tamil Nadu. It's not vice versa.
Okay, let me take that here. You make an interesting point. Suman C. Raman, according to the AIADMK, BJP needs them more than they need the BJP. At the same time, there is this rising profile of Annamalai as he goes on a yatra. Is this about individuals, therefore, the rise of Annamalai? Or is it simply that the AIADMK has realized that being with the BJP at this moment in a state like Tamil Nadu could be subject to diminishing returns?
Rajdeep, a few months ago, there was talk that at one of their internal meetings, Mr. Annamalai said he will resign if the alliance with the ADMK continued. Now, ever since that, he has gone almost single-handedly on a mission to wreck the alliance, with speeches which no alliance partner, no self-respecting party will tolerate. Look, the AIADMK has been possibly one of the most docile and loyal allies of the BJP, for years now. And to the extent that they were ridiculed in the state, they were lampooned, they were called a slave party of BJP. People used to just say, Adimai. Adimai is basically equivalent to a slave in Tamil. So that was the extent to which the AIADMK bowed before the BJP. But Mr. Annamalai seems to have decided for some reason that they had to be pushed out of the alliance. And first was the remark about Jayalalitha's corruption and so on. And then was the remark about Mr. Annadurai running away from Madurai and so on, which by the way is factually not backed up by any kind of evidence. And subsequently, the AIADMK initially ignored. They thought the BJP High Command was, overlooking some of these things. But when it became clear that the BJP High Command was sort of, playing a double game, as it were, and letting Mr. Annamalai take them on, I think at that point it became clear that they had to call it quits.
No, but could it be strategic? Yeah. Could it be, Sumant, a deliberate strategy for the BJP to either lead a new third front in Tamil Nadu by targeting both the Dravidian parties? They have nothing to lose. They didn't win a seat there last time. So the opportunity to project Annamalai as a leader of a third front taking on both the Dravidian parties, is that part of the strategy?
Hardeep, Annamalai started off extremely well. And about a year ago, it did look at one stage that the BJP would emerge as a major force in Tamil Nadu. The last 6 to 8 months, much of the sheen has gone off. He's gone, he's seen as something of a loose cannon. You don't know what he will say next and who he will go after. Hardly any evidence has been put up to back any of his claims. He makes corruption charges. He at one point said he was going to release a list of corruption charges against ADMK leaders when he was still in the alliance. So I think that you'll get the picture.
No, but who needs it? But who needs who more? Does Annamalai?
Both parties need each other. This is a setback to both parties. But from the AIADMK's long-term survival strategy, this is possibly the right decision that Mr. Edappadi Palaniswamy has taken. Obviously, now he will have to back it up by going to the people and vigorously opposing the DMK, because there is a very sizable anti-DMK vote which used to be traditionally the AIADMK's vote bank in Tamil Nadu. The BJP is trying to take a portion of that, and that means in the 2024 Lok Sabha elections, it will be advantage DMK Congress combined at the moment.
Very interesting. A final word there for Mr. Satyan. Is this therefore the AIADMK with its back to the wall? Ever since J. Jayalalitha passed away, you've struggled. You've struggled with internal battles, the Paneer Selvam camp versus the Palaniswamy's camp. Now, there's a sense you're without the BJP. Are you going to form another front with smaller parties? Where does the AIADMK go from here? Or will you join hands with the BJP again after the elections, as many suspect?
Yeah, all troubles, what you narrated, all done and dusted, Rajdeep. EPS is now scripting the third episode of AIADMK. When the party started, it was 16 lakh members. And Porchi Thalevi Amma made it to 1.5 crore. Under EPS third phase, the party has now surpassed 2 crores of cadres, which is 20% of Tamil Nadu population and 33% of the voters, eligible voters in TN. So let us not negate the fact that all is well in the AIADMK camp under the single leadership of EPS. Now the battle is all set. We have to go and fight out the battle. And the booth level committees are formed. It's all set. So the game is on by now. And the few parties who are with DMK have started to show interest. And there are signals from the DMK camp as well to join under the leadership of EPS.
So
day is big in politics. Okay. And the coming days are going to be really big for Tamil Nadu political circles and for AIADMK.
We'll wait and see how this all plays out. As I said, Tamil Nadu remains a key state because of the sheer number of seats for the Lok Sabha. Is it really advantage DMK Congress, as Sumant Raman seems to suggest, or is the will the AIADMK live to fight another day? We'll wait and see. For now, I appreciate both my guests joining me here on our other talking point. Let's take a break. When we return, Get Real India. Tonight's shocker is coming from Bihar. A Dalit woman assaulted, stripped and urinated upon in Patna for refusing to pay an additional interest on a loan of our family. We'll tell you more on that story. Get Real India is coming up next.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNB Group Company.
Air quality today. In Delhi, 183. In Mumbai, 76. In Kolkata, 31. In Bangalore, 32. In Chennai, 37. In Hyderabad, 17.
Welcome back. Let's turn to tonight's Get Real India story, which is a shocker from Bihar. Money lenders allegedly stripped a Dalit woman over her inability to pay back a loan of 1,500 rupees. That's right, 1,500 rupees. There have been no arrests in the case so far, and it's put the Bihar government of Nitish Kumar on the mat. Take a look at tonight's Get Real India story.
A Dalit woman was allegedly assaulted, stripped, and urinated upon in Patna. The victim claims she was targeted by local money lenders who had loaned her family 1,500 rupees.
सर हमको 10 बजे रात सर बजा था, हम गए कल पर, हमको कहा कि चलो तो उसका पति के हम कब्जा कैले हैं, हम बाइक के झोंक में चला गए, हमको सारा कपड़ा खोल दिया सर, गारनी बकने लगा, इसका मार के हम लंगे बुलावेंगे रोड पर। सर उसका बेटा से कहा ना अंशु कुमार के प्रमोद सिंह के इसका मारो, जे कहा सर हम छूट पड़े सर, हम लंगे उघारे ऐसी भागल चला है सर।
The victim's family claims that they had returned the principal and interest, but the money lenders harassed them for more money.
किसी को अगर 500 रुपया दिया, 10 रुपये सैकड़ा, किसी को 20 रुपये सैकड़ा, जिसका जितना मजबूरी रहता है उस हिसाब से उसका दर को बढ़ा देता है। खास करके दलितों को निशाना बनाया जाता है, जो कि पूरी तरह से दबे कुचले हो, जिसका किसी तरह का ज्ञान नहीं हो। इसमें कोई लिखा पढ़ी नहीं, उसको वो अपने मन से अपने में लिख लेता है कागज पर। अगर हम पैसा भी देंगे उसका भी कोई प्रूफ नहीं, वो सीधे कहता है कि बस इतना हुआ इतना दो। उसकी मर्जी की बात रहता है, अगर उसको मन होगी तो छोड़ दिया।
The accused, Pradeep and Anshu, are absconding. Their family has denied the accusations.
ये सब गलत है। हाँ बाती हुआ था, गए थे पैसा मांगने, मन के वो भी उनके जेंट्स नहीं गए थे, जो मर्द है ना प्रमोद सिंह, वो नहीं गए थे पैसा मांगने शुरुआत, मतलब कि औरत ही गई थी पैसा मांगने। तब बोली ना कि जब पैसा ना देहू टहलावा काहे देहू जे, तब बोली ना कौची कि ना देवू पैसा जे कौची कर लेमी जे तोर दामाद आई तू ता देवू जे, तो वही चक्कर में बोले ना कि जे ना देमी ना तो देख ले तोरा जब मारबो। मतलब ऐसी बाती हो रहा था, वो भी औरत में हो रहा था, यहाँ जेंट्स कोई नहीं था।
There have been no arrests in the case so far. The police say the assault took place on Saturday night, but there is no proof of urination.
जिसमें महिला रात में आकर के थाने पर आवेदन दी है। इस घटना में कांड दर्ज किया गया है। पुलिस हॉस्पिटल में निगरानी की है। उसके पीड़ित महिला के घर पर भी निगरानी की जा रही है। उनका स्वास्थ्य भी स्टेबल है। अभी तक के जांच में प्राप्त हुआ है कि घटना SC/ST का मामला बनता है।
The incident has exposed how loan sharks have a free run even today, despite banking services becoming more accessible.
The question continues to remain how such people are allowed to operate even at times when financial inclusion programs are on their complete absolute thrust as far as the system is concerned. With Vijay Nadeem Alam and Rajesh Jha, Aditya Vaibhav, India Today.
Absolute shocker there from Bihar, 1,500 rupees. Let's turn to some good news. And the good news comes from the women in blue who brought glory to the nation at the Asian Games. A superb show from our women's cricketers got them the anticipated gold medal at the Asian Games. Former Indian cricket star Jhulan Goswami saying it's one of the biggest moments in India's cricketing history. Take a look at tonight's Good News Today story.
A maiden appearance for the women's cricket team at the Asian Games.
Has won the gold medal. First time ever India participated in this Asian Games in cricket, and they've done a great job for the nation.
What a moment for her. And the women in blue emerged continental champions with a win in the final against Sri Lanka.
India go on and win the final as well and clinch gold.
Fans in Hangzhou witnessed history as India got its first ever medal in cricket at the Asian Games.
In a multidiscipline event.
I think pretty special to contribute to the Indian tally of medals. You don't get to do that a lot as a cricketer. And of course Commonwealth was pretty special too because, just being part of the whole Indian contingent and just feels different because we always, I think the world events are World Cups for us. After the silver in Commonwealth, definitely we wanted to come here. We had a purpose that, we'll get a gold for India. And really happy that we could do it.
The best ranked Asian team in the world was billed as the favourites to finish in first place, and Harmanpreet Kaur's side rose to the occasion.
I think, Nikhil, it's the biggest moment in women's cricket. And since last few years, our girls are performing very consistently in international cricket. Last year in Commonwealth, they are very close to win the gold medal, but it was pretty far. Just to miss that gold medal. And this time, in the first time, India, men's and women's, both the teams have participated in the Asian Games. And first thing is India won the gold medal. This was the biggest moment. It's a very proud moment for entire country as well as all women's cricketers in our country. It will create a new buzz in our country.
A gold medal in Hangzhou has given this team its biggest moment in history after it missed out on the big prize at the 2022 Commonwealth Games and on several occasions in World Cup finals. In its maiden Asian Games appearance, the women in blue have led from the front and raised the expectations of the nation that is hoping to cross the 100 medal mark at the Games this year. Sports Bureau, India Today.
In today's match as well, Pooja Vastrakar picked up.
Okay, it's not just the women. The Indian men's 10-meter air rifle team also registered a gold medal win at the Asian Games. Remember, shooting has always been the pride of India at the Asian Games, but also registering a world record. So the team won of Rudraksh Balasaheb Patil, Divyan Singh Panwar and Aishwarya Pratap Singh Tomar shot a total of 1,893 points in the individual qualification round, which was 0.4 points more than the previous record held by China. So great to see our shooters do so well once again at the Asian Games. I leave you with those images of India winning it and a reaction from Divyansh Panwar, one of our gold medal winners. Let's hope that India continues to strike gold at the Asian Games. You stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubhratri. Jai Hind, Namaskar.
उनको ये था कि आउटडोर एक्टिविटीज़ में किसी में डालूं, वो चाहे वो किसी में भी हो। तो हमारे यहाँ पे एक कोई रिलेटिव थे, तो वो मतलब गार्ड की नौकरी करते थे वहाँ पे शूटिंग रेंज पे। तो उन्होंने बताया कि एक बार इसको शूटिंग रेंज में डाल के भेज दो। तो तब मैं वहाँ पे गया, तब वो हुई थी शुरुआत इसकी।
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNB Group Company.
Amidst the worsening Indo-Canada relations, Canadians from Indian origin celebrated Ganesh Chaturthi with festive spirit. Gujaratis, Punjabis, Kashmiris in Canada's Brampton gathered for Ganesh Visarjan and Puja. They felt that Canada has always been safe, but statements by Trudeau were irresponsible. They felt that they've always lived in harmony, but now fear of what may happen in future. That kind of fear has crept in. My colleague Anisha Mathur brings you this report from Canada.
I have gotten a call from my friends कि उनके जो बच्चे हैं वो यहाँ पढ़ने आए हैं और वो पूछ रहे हैं परिस्थिति कैसी है. मैंने उन्हें बताया कि भाई ग्राउंड लेवल पे परिस्थिति काफ़ी सेफ है, आप डरिए मत, बट अभी उनमें एक खौफ बैठ गया है. डिवीज़न इज़ नॉट गुड फॉर एनी कंट्री और ये जो डिवीज़न हो रहा है वो I would say it's going to be based on religion, which it is not. वो प्रांतवाद है, वो जातिवाद है नहीं. But just because of a statement from Prime Minister which had no basis and he even refused to provide any type of proof, right? So I think that stands for nothing. Okay. And right now we are all safe.
एक्चुअली आई डोंट थिंक सो कि स्टूडेंट वगैरह पे इफेक्ट ऐसा कुछ आए करके, लेकिन अभी जो इंडिया ने जो इनिशिएटिव किया है कि ये जो एक्टिविटी इधर बढ़ रही है उसको कंट्रोल तो लाना ही पड़ेगा. इफ इज नॉट कंट्रोल्ड बाय द कैनेडियन गवर्नमेंट, नेवर नो व्हाट कैन वी आर नॉट सेफ हियर देन. It will spread in all the Canada and it will spoil the relation with the India also.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNB Group Company.
Your favorite technology show, Tech Today, is on the road yet again. I'm here in Arlington, Virginia. This behind me is Amazon's second headquarters here in the US. It's going to be an exclusive first look on the show and of course the big Amazon event. All I can tell you as a spoiler alert is AI and a lot of AI. In fact, that's not just the Amazon event we're talking about. We're going to take you to the other coast of the United States with another Tech Today exclusive and so much more AI happening back home as well. I'm your host Ayush Alavadi and this is Tech Today. Well, this might look like an ordinary smart speaker, but this is the newly launched Echo Show 8 here at Amazon HQ2 in Arlington, Virginia. That's where I am at the big Amazon launch event. And what makes this one really special is a new small technology hack, which seems incremental, but can be a game changer. And that's essentially called far field. So if I want to consume content and I'm closer to the Echo Show device, it will be displayed like this. But if I walk a few steps back, it will then adjust or adapt the content for me to see it from this particular distance. Now, how is this possible? It's possible using proximity sensors, the camera right over here. You can see it's already adjusted for me coming back right over here, closer to the device. It also has, well, a new speaker at the back, which is much improved. It comes with spatial audio and can really sort out, well, a room with all the cabinets and figure out where it tosses the audio in what proportion. So much better sound quality, way more immersive, but it is $150 here in the US. This is one of those Amazon products which will make its way to India. There's a bunch of announcements here at the Amazon event. Now, some of those products you might not see in India. We will show you those on Tech Today. This is your exclusive first look of the Echo Show 8. But the big buzzword for Amazon this time was generative AI. Alexa is getting smarter, it's supercharged, and, well, it's a lot more conversational.
You are watching India Today. Powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNB Group Company.
Powered by Volkswagen. Co-powered by PolicyBazaar.com. हर family होगी insured.
A standing ovation for a Ukrainian veteran of the Second World War.
A standing ovation for a former Nazi commander in the Canadian Parliament
who fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians during the Second World War.
From Israel to Russia, global criticism for Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Such a sloppy attitude towards memory, and memory must be preserved in relation to the Nazis. No matter how old they are, there is no statute of limitations for these crimes.
Already in the line of Indian fire over support to Khalistan terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
We have been sharing details of fugitives from justice who have run away, who are seeking safe havens in Canada and elsewhere, to come back to India and face injustice and justice, whether it's economic fugitives or it's terrorists. I think that's the way rule of law works.
From Nijjar to Nazi, double trouble for Trudeau. Will Canada wake up and crack down on Khalistan terror? That's our top focus on India First. Canada's opposition Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wants the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to apologize to the people of Canada for that standing ovation a Nazi war veteran got in the Canadian Parliament. Though the House Speaker has apologized, but Trudeau remains in the line of fire. Both Israel and Russia have hit out at this standing ovation. India is already angry with Trudeau for encouragement to Khalistani terrorists in Canada under his watch, on his watch. In fact, there is a pro-Khalistan rally right now, Death to India rally. How can something like this, where people are calling for Hindus to be sent out of Canada, be permitted? Some changes appear to be taking place. The poster painting a target on the backs of top Indian diplomats in Canada, those posters have been taken down and there are reports of additional security on ground for the Indian mission. I'm Gaurav Sawant. We get you the latest. India Today has the biggest team of reporters on ground zero to get you more on the story. But first, as always, the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's all-out attack on the Congress says the party has handed over reins to urban Naxals. The Prime Minister declares he's the only one who fulfills all guarantees. AIA-DMK exits the NDA ahead of 2024 elections, blames Tamil Nadu BJP chief Annamalai for the breakdown. India Today accesses Khalistani terror backer Gurpatwant Singh Pannu's dossier. Documents reveal Pannu was engineering a plot to radicalize even Kashmiris. All his Chandigarh properties have now been seized by the NIA. Massive boost for the Indian Air Force. The C-295 transport aircraft inducted by Union Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. It will be used to paradrop troops and cargo. It's raining gold for India at the Asian Games. Women's cricket team and 10-meter air rifle trio of Rudraksh Patil, Aishwarya Tomar and Divyansh Panwar win gold. So the Khalistanis in Canada have called for an anti-India rally. They're blockading the Indian missions and the High Commission and the consulates in Vancouver, in Toronto and in Ottawa. Barricades have been erected. Police have been deployed around Indian missions in Canada. Toronto, Vancouver and Ottawa missions are seeing some additional police deployment. Police have been deployed as Khalistan backers hold a death to India protests. Posters praising Khalistani terrorists have meanwhile been taken down in Surrey. Protesters told not to use loudspeakers for their hateful comments against India. But are these just half measures being taken very reluctantly under intense pressure? Because the Canadian government and Justin Trudeau as Prime Minister of Canada clearly in the line of global fire. No action has been taken yet against Khalistan's terror backer Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, who shocked the civilized world with his hateful Hindus leave Canada rant. How can that even be permitted in any country that claims to follow rule-based order and claims to be a liberal democracy? There is an atmosphere of anger, anguish and fear among at least a section of Hindus in Canada after Pannu's threat telling Hindus to leave Canada and the inaction of the Justin Trudeau government. I quickly want to cut across to India Today's ace correspondent on Ground Zero. Anisha Mathur joins us from Toronto. We also have Mihir Trivedi who joins us from Vancouver. Anisha, I want to understand from you first, what's the current situation, especially after Pannu's death to India rally and telling Hindus to leave Canada? What's the situation on ground?
Well, Gaurav, I'm outside the Indian consulate in Toronto where a few Khalistan supporters are holding a protest. What is what is something that the Indian government should take very seriously, and the Canadian government should also take very seriously, is the fact that these people are, while holding up the Khalistani flags, sort of have thrown an Indian flag down on the ground. But it doesn't seem that the police here in Canada is going to take any action about the way these people are protesting. The barricading that has been put up around the consulate office, they've hung up their posters out on the barricades themselves. They're walking around with the Indian flag on the ground. Even despite this massive police presence, we're seeing presence of Metropolitan Police, the Federal RCP, the riot police, all sorts of police presence is here. But the way these people are protesting, it seems that they are trying to provoke a response from Indians, from people, from the Indian government. Very clearly, that is because of the way these people are holding their protests, and the call for call against Hindus in Canada that had gone out from Pannu, while it has been condemned by on social media by politicians in Canada, it is still being treated as a free speech issue. We saw Liberal MP Chandra Arya coming out on the media and saying that, well, this kind of a call should not have gone out. The Conservative leader of opposition has criticized this kind of a rant, saying that this kind of hate speech should not have been made, that everybody has the right to live in Canada peacefully. This is also something that the ministers in the Canadian government, in the Trudeau government, came out and said. But right now, as the protest is going on right in front of me, they have blocked off the main entrance to the building where the Indian consulate office is. They've blocked off that main entrance with their posters, and but it is clear that the Canadian police officials who are very closely watching the situation, they're not doing anything to stop the protest itself. And that is something that the Indian government will be will probably be taking very seriously. Back to you.
Stay with me for a moment, Anisha. I also want to bring in Mihir Trivedi, who joins us from Vancouver. Mihir, India was very concerned at the lack of security at the Indian missions in Canada and lack of security for our diplomats. Their names and their photographs, they were made public. Adequate security measures provided on ground now. What's the situation where you are?
Absolutely. As you can see, right behind me is the Indian consulate in Vancouver, and the security has been beefed up. In fact, I could see police personnel right in the morning. In fact, as soon as dawn, they were present here, making sure they are, overseeing all the arrangements. In fact, if I could just show our viewers the kind of arrangements we see at this point, is that this is the entrance to the Indian consulate, and there is a lot of presence of police inside. In fact, this entire street is completely covered by Canadian police that is making sure that this protest remains peaceful. Remember, this is a call, a protest which is supposed to be peaceful, but the Canadian police is taking no chances. Remember, this is the downtown area, a busy area, and there are a lot of big offices and big companies having several employees coming here. So they can't take chances, and also the security of the people working in the Indian consulate is their responsibility. There is a sense of message that has been coming out saying that we will disrupt the functioning of the Indian consulate today with this protest, and that is something the Canadian police will not let happen. In fact, Canada has, in a sense, try to make certain moves to ensure that they try to make sure they save whatever is left between the relationship between India and Canada. They are making positive moves by pulling down the posters that were targeting Indian diplomats at the Sari Gurudwara where Nijjar was killed. Today's protest is important for them.
Just pulling down a couple of posters, I mean, that's too little, that's too late, considering that country has blood on its hands. The leadership has blood on their hands for the Kanishk bombing, where more than 300 people were killed, and yet Khalistan terror continues to grow in Canada. I mean, it's a shame, Anisha. And you've been speaking to a large number of people of Indian origin, both the Sikhs and the Hindus and other Canadians there. What's the buzz on ground? Do they see the anguish in India at Canada's support to Khalistan terror and extremism, and of course the criminal gangs there? Anisha, can you hear me? Okay, we do see...
I'm sorry, Gaurav, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, you've been speaking to a cross-section of people, Anisha. You've been speaking to the Hindus, you've been speaking to the Sikhs, you've been speaking to Canadians. Do they realize the anger and anguish in India, given what's happening, the support to Khalistani terrorists, extremists and organized criminal gangs? Or some would argue state support.
Well, Gaurav, to be very honest with you, this entire issue is being treated with a lot of cynicism and by the Indian diaspora here in Canada. We've been speaking to persons who are connected to the Hindu community leaders, to Sikh community leaders, to people. They have been saying that it seems that Justin Trudeau was trying to consolidate his popularity with with a particular vote base, which seems to have backfired on him. It is also something that has been a bone of contention and a question of concern for the Hindu community over the last year or two, as there have been cases of temple vandalization as well as intimidation. What I'm also picking up from analysts and journalists who work with the Indian community in the Indian diaspora here is that the Khalistanis seem to be a very aggressive, a very vocal group, but they are a minority, about 5 to 6% of the Sikhs population in Canada. Even in Brampton itself, what I'm hearing is that most people may not actually support them, but they are too intimidated to really oppose them at present. But of course, with the current standoff between India and Canada, the question now that is worrying the Indian diaspora here is what happens next. Will they be able to visit India freely? What will happen to their friends, relatives who want to come to Canada, who want to visit Canada? What happens to those who want to go back home to India? And that is a question that they're asking, that should the Canadian government not have taken all of that into account before making this kind of statements. But right now, Gaurav, I will once again repeat, I'm outside the Indian consulate, and if you can give me 20 more seconds to speak. I'm so the posters that are being put up out here praising Nijjar, calling him a shaheed, calling him a martyr, that is something that will have to be taken very seriously by India and by the Indian government, because it seems that this so-called very aggressive minority is being given space. Right now in front of me, a lot of the Canadian national media, international media is watching these protests, and they are talking to the people who are participating in these protests, and these people are very, very vocally anti-India. So what kind of messaging is going out in the international media here is something that the government of India needs to be concerned about as well. Back to you.
Okay, keep tracking that story. Mihir and Anisha, I will come back to you for more on this. The messaging very clearly, and I'm sure they're able to separate the wheat from the chaff. They will realize nothing justifies the bombing of Kanishk, that Air India aircraft, the attempt to bomb the other aircraft, the bomb that exploded at the Narita airport, and the fact that that mindset and that terrorism continues in Canada even today. But the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau remains in the eye of a storm, also because of the standing ovation in the Canadian Parliament to Yaroslav Hunka, a 98-year-old Ukrainian war veteran seen as part of Nazi Germany collaborator formation in the Second World War. Those forces stand accused of killing Jewish and Polish civilians in the Second World War, and there was anger and outrage in Israel, in Poland and in Russia, with Justin Trudeau being accused of backing a Nazi war veteran. Though the House Speaker Anthony Rota apologized, Trudeau remains in the line of fire.
Zelensky's speech received at least a dozen standing ovations. There was also one for this man, a 98-year-old Ukrainian Canadian who fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians during the Second World War.
Such a sloppy attitude towards memory, and memory must be preserved in relation to the Nazis. No matter how old they are, there is no statute of limitations for these crimes. We know that many Western countries, including Canada, have raised a young generation that does not know who fought whom and what happened during the Second World War. This is fraught with the fact that fascism will manifest itself here and there, and we now see how it is trying to find its feet in the center of Europe, in Ukraine.
So Justin Trudeau government in Canada may not act, but the Narendra Modi government in India has cracked the whip on Khalistanis. Their overseas citizens of India, OCI cards, they're being cancelled. Passports of Khalistanis involved in vandalizing the Indian missions, they will be cancelled. Now, the National Investigation Agency, it's actually released a list of 19 Khalistanis fugitive from law living abroad in countries like the United States, like the United Kingdom, Canada, Dubai, and some even in Pakistan. We get you more in this report.
A bogus, non-binding exercise aimed at diasporic seats. A so-called Punjab referendum asking participants whether they want the Sikh majority Punjab in India to become a separate Khalistan. The man behind the sham project, Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, a lawyer of joint US and Canadian citizenship who seeks for justice communities proscribed by India. The 56-year-old supporter of Khalistan, born in village Khankot of Amritsar and now based in the United States. He was declared a terrorist by India in 2020. Pannu named in more than a dozen criminal cases, some of them linked to terror and other violent activities. The NIA has intensified its crackdown on Pannu. Over the weekend, 2 of his properties were confiscated in Amritsar and Chandigarh, and so was his agricultural land in his ancestral village of Khankot in Amritsar district. Slain Khalistani supporter and designated terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar was one of advocates of Pannu's sham Khalistan referendum in Canada. As per sources, overseas citizenship cards and passports of Khalistani supporters involved in vandalizing Indian consulates abroad will now be cancelled by India. Indian agencies sharing their details with airports to keep a tab on their movements. The NIA has also finalized a list of 19 Khalistani fugitives who are part of anti-India plots. Most of them living in the US, the UK, Canada, Dubai and Pakistan. The action comes amidst diplomatic escalation between India and Canada over Nijjar's murder. With Shreya Chatterjee, Bureau Report, India Today.
All is not well for Justin Trudeau and it continues to go downhill. It's been a week of embarrassment for the Canadian Prime Minister, from his plummeting popularity ratings to the global image of Canada, and the fact that Canada is now being seen as a safe haven for terrorists and extremists and criminal gangs. The downfall actually began soon after Trudeau's explosive and false allegations of the potential link of Indian agents in the killing of a Khalistani terrorist, Nijjar. Watch India Today get you more in this report.
It hasn't been a good week for the Canadian Prime Minister. It's been 6 days since he dropped the diplomatic equivalent of a nuclear bomb on India-Canada relations with this.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Since then, it's been an uninterrupted downslide for Justin Trudeau. Politically ridiculed, diplomatically criticized, and isolated even by his closest friends. As we mark a week since Trudeau's quest to paint India the assassin of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Nijjar, let's see how it's going for the Canadian Prime Minister. For starters, India hit back instantly with a visa blockade, stunning Team Trudeau. Canada's conspicuous lack of reciprocal action not only showing weakness, but the country's helpless dependence on Indian labour and workers in Canadian industry. Second, Trudeau's attempts to rally the Five Eyes intelligence alliance, the world's so-called Anglosphere. But each of those major powers, the US, UK and Australia, provided only token words of support, nothing near the kind of backing Trudeau was hoping for. In this game of optics, it was clear Prime Minister Trudeau was all alone in his mission against India. The third big embarrassment for Trudeau, the claim from one of his own allies that his allegations against India are based on open source information available on the internet.
The only briefings that I've been able to receive from CSIS are what are called open information briefings or open source briefings, which is information that's available to the public doing an internet search, which I find frustrating.
The fourth big blow to Trudeau were his plummeting popularity ratings, with his political opposition using the moment to mount a ferocious attack on him.
I think we need to see more facts. The Prime Minister hasn't provided any facts. He provided a statement, and I will just emphasize that he didn't tell me any more in private than he told Canadians in public, so we want to see more information.
Fifth, and probably most embarrassingly, Trudeau's closest government ally, the Khalistan sympathetic Jagmeet Singh, virtually threw the Canadian Prime Minister under the bus, putting out this tweet, where he cunningly fitted in a criticism of his close friend Trudeau in an unrelated issue, hoping to offset the heat on himself. Sixth, with the global glare now fixed on his accommodation of terrorists on his soil, a shamefaced Trudeau had to order the offensive posters to be pulled down from the Surrey Gurudwara. Posters honouring terrorist Nijjar and calling for the killing of Indian diplomats. Seventh, with India stepping up the pressure and seizing Indian properties of 19 Khalistani terrorists, including several based in Canada, Trudeau will likely begin to face unbearable heat from the very section he's been trying to milk for politics. And finally, with a list of Canadian Khalistanis, whose PIO and OCI green cards are all set to be cancelled, ending their chances of easy travel to India, Trudeau will face the music from extremists who took their India linkages for granted thus far. As you can see, it hasn't been Trudeau's week. Bureau Report, India Today.
We will continue to track developments on the story very closely, but that is all I have for you on India First this evening. Many thanks for watching. Coming up next is Business Today with Abha Bakaya. Stay with us.
You are watching India Today, powered by Finest, Be Sustainable Change, a BNB Group Company.